Hello and welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone today. And welcome to Peace On, your source for inspiring conversations and information from thought leaders across the spectrum on topics related to the strategies of building peace, fostering nonviolence, and creating a world that thrives, shifting our understanding toward empathy, compassion, and connection. I'm Terry Mason. I'm on the board of the Peace Alliance. I'm delighted to be here today, and join with me is Liz Gannon-Graydon, who is also on our board, and Jelena Popovich, who is our Teaching Peace in Schools lead. And our special guest today is a longtime friend of the Peace Alliance, Jerilyn Stapleton. Jerilyn and I first met in 2005 when we went to the first conference in Washington, D.C. for the Peace Alliance that we attended. We've attended more since then. But Jerilyn, can you come off mute and say good morning?
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here.
It's nice to see you. We're delighted to have you. I'm looking forward to having your story shared. But first, we're going to start with Jelena to lead us in a little meditation practice and bring us all in. Jelena?
Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is where you're at or when you're listening to this podcast. I would like to share actually a meditation that it's part of work that Russ Dominican in his book, My Grandmother's Hands, has shared, and it's how to kind of come into the room. So it will take us on a little bit of a journey from outer space into our own seat. So you are for a treat. So take any posture that your body will appreciate most at this moment. That could be sitting, standing, or laying down. You're welcome to be on camera if you're live, or off, whatever feels most comfortable. And just allow your eyes to close if that's your preference at this moment. Just take a few nourishing breaths. Yeah. Just imagine you are floating in space. So you, it's a planet Earth, just turning slowly. Just watch it for a moment, turn slowly. And slowly descend till the part of the country you are in fills your field of vision. Just stay there a little bit, directly above it, just like a satellite. Just keep coming down and descending until you're looking down whatever city, town, mountain, valley, your body is space right now. And continue your descent until you're looking down at the top of the building you're in. If you're seated outdoors, descend far enough so that you can see your own body. You're viewing yourself from a helicopter. And just keep slowly and steadily dropping till you can see your body in details. As if you're above, just about 10 feet above it. Just observe your body posture, any movement, clothing. Just slowly and smoothly descend the rest of the way. and slip inside your body. For a few breaths, simply be aware of being in your body right at this moment. Allow yourself to relax and let the gravity support you. Just notice if there are any sensations present, any temperature you're noticing in your body, any pressure, any movement. Perhaps you're noticing breath, soles of the earth. And with a few breaths, just allow yourself to offer gratitude for your body and your presence at this moment. As we come to the close of the practice, just breath gently if your eyes were closed. Gently allow light to come in and looking around you, behind you. And if you need movement, allow your body to move. Just return to here and now. Thank you all for your practice, and welcome, Jerilyn. So lovely to see you and be in the space.
Thank you. Feel the same with you. That was a beautiful meditation. Thank you so much. My story today is from a recent trip that I took. I hadn't been on an airplane in two and a half years, like during COVID, like the majority of us. And normally I would be going 2 or 3 times trips a year. I was on my way to Chicago for the national conference, National NOW conference. NOW is the National Organization for Women. And so I needed to be there for the board meeting, which happens the day before, the actual conference started. And what happened like during the conference was I was elected to represent the Pacific District on the national board. So I was really, really nervous about traveling again, not knowing how things would be, like post-COVID, as we consider ourselves to be in at this point. Not really, but anyway, I have a habit of carrying my important cards, like my driver's license and credit cards and everything. I carry them in my pocket. I don't think it's a good idea to have them in a wallet in a purse. I feel more safe with them on my person. So I had changed my pockets with the clothes that I was wearing for the trip, and the cards had fallen on the floor. I picked them all up and thinking I had my driver's license and everything in there, and was packed. Proceeded downstairs to be out in front for the lift that was scheduled the day before to pick me up. And of course, this is my first experience with ordering a Lyft or an Uber. So they didn't show up. So I started to panic. I called a cab company. They said they didn't have anyone that could pick me up in the vicinity, gave me another cab company to call, which I did. They weren't sure that they could get a taxi there, within, 15, 20 minutes. Well, then I really started to panic. And I'm thinking, if I wait 15, 20 minutes and no one shows up again, I'm going to miss my flight. So I decided to jump in my car and make a mad dash to the airport. I was probably speeding every chance I could get in my quest to get to the airport and get parked, which at the Burbank Airport, you park and they have a tram that you get on that takes you from the parking lot, to the actual terminal building. So I got parked and immediately a tram shows up. Now they only come about like every 10 minutes and like not wanting to wait or waste any time. I flagged her down. It happened to be a woman driver and that I hadn't gotten my bag out of the car yet. So she was nice enough actually to get out and help me with my bag and get everything onto the tram and to get to the terminal. I get to the terminal and I go to check my bag and I had my boarding pass. And so along with that, I gave them what I thought was my driver's license. So I have a mobility problem. I can't walk like long distances. So I have to get a wheelchair, which they're really nice at Burbank Airport and in terms of accommodating everyone. So they get me a wheelchair and the guy, after they check the bag, he comes back and he hands me what is my SAG, that's the Screen Actors Guild Film Society card, which has a picture of identification on it with a white background, which, from if your eyes aren't working too good, it looks similar to your driver's license. So I go, what's this? And so then I started checking, through my cards to find my actual driver's license, and it's not there. So the guy that was pushing me in the wheelchair, he said, do you still want to proceed? And I did not want to miss this flight because it would have just ruined the timeline tremendously. So I said, yes, let's go. I said, why do you have to, show them all this identification? He says, they just want to make sure that you are you. So I said, well, I have lots of identification, whatever. But when we got up to the TSA guy, gave him my SAG card and the boarding pass or whatever, and they passed me through. I go through everything just fine. And he gets me to the gate 5 minutes ahead of boarding time. So anyway, and I'm on the flight. I had a connecting flight, which just seems to be the way you travel now. It's not anything direct. You have to make all of these stops and change planes and all of that, which was interesting because then I had to wait, like a half hour, for the wheelchair folks, which I find out they had outsourced them and there's a shortage of staff. And one reason is that they're paying them practically nothing, thinking that they're going to be making all their money, like on tips, which is not actually accurate. But then that poses a problem in terms of the staffing and the wheelchairs. So get to Chicago and well, to back up a little bit, when you have a connecting flight and now you're having to wait, for the wheelchairs and whatever, it's getting like even more stressful. So not only that, so when I actually get to Chicago, I'm saying there was another woman in another wheelchair. Her and I are both sitting there waiting for someone to come and take us to where we needed to go. So, which is kind of nice. You get to know people. In fact, I enjoy traveling because I really get to meet people that I would normally meet and be able to talk about the Peace Alliance, my favorite subject. Anyway, I'm digressing here. Now on the way back, and so my friend that I'm staying with and whatever, she's just laughing with her that I got to travel and get through security on my sidecar. So now when we leave Chicago, we get to the airport, get the wheelchair, and we're going up to the TSA. And this woman, seemed to be like she might have been prior military or something, running everything by the book. So I explained to her what had happened, in Burbank to even get me to Chicago. But she was saying, well, do you have any other identification? So I had my expired passport, which also has a picture on it. But in that was my social security card, my Medicare, all kinds of personal ID. And then, and she says, well, do you have anything else? And I said, yes, I have credit cards or whatever. And I gave her, and she says, well, give me as many of those as you can. So I gave her not everything, but a good majority of the ones that I use more frequently. And so she takes them and well, I have to take this to my supervisor. So now I'm sitting in the wheelchair with my friend and the nice young man who's pushing the wheelchair. We're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting. And all of a sudden it dawns on me, there went my whole life, with the identification. Not only could people copy that information, all kinds of things started going through your mind. And one of the things was, well, what happens if they don't let me on this flight? And how am I going to get home? The other thing that occurred to me was, oh my goodness, this was what it feels like when a human trafficker confiscates all of a person's identification, and they have then no way to prove who they are, which is just a very, very strange feeling that you even have to have all of this identification to prove who you are. So I'm starting to really get nervous the longer that it's taking for them to get back. And I'm told, well, it went from one supervisor to another or whatever. And finally, a gentleman comes back with all of my identification. And then he has to proceed. Then he's the one that has to take me through the checking points and whatnot. We get through all of that. Now I have a briefcase with files in my computer and whatever, and also my purse. I have never in life had them go through my belongings like they did at that point. That gentleman must have taken every single item out of my purse. Then I'm realizing how much stuff I had in my purse. But he's not putting things back in the proper place. So that's upsetting again because I know where everything is. And he's now discombobulating everything. And not only that, then he goes through, like my, where I have my files and whatever, and he proceeds to start putting them back in upside down where everything could fall out. So I'm at my wit's end. I wanted to scream and I thought, I can't because I need to get on that plane. So I don't want to interrupt or do anything to cause not being able to get back on that plane and back home. So now I'm worried about my driver's license. I'm checking around the car. I thought maybe it had fallen out and it was around the car. Not there. I'm backtracking on my steps to try to find my driver's license. And finally, like the next morning, I'm looking down and I see this little teensy tiny little bit of white, and sure enough, it had slid underneath my bed. So I now have my driver's license back. I don't have to go to the DVM and go through all of that of trying to get a second one. But anyway, that's my saga of that. I don't know exactly what to call it. Adventure. I don't know whether it's something that I would like to add in terms of adventure, but it was quite an experience. Anyway, I'll turn it back to you, Yelena.
It sounds like an experience, Jerilyn. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
And so we're going to go into breakout rooms. And Liz and Yelena, would you like to share an inquiry before we do that?
Yeah, I would. And I'm going to tell kind of a brief story of my own as a way into the breakout rooms. Jerilyn, when we were talking about your story, one of the things that I was thinking about is if anyone studied physics, even a little bit, right? There's a thing called the observer effect. And that's that idea that the person who observes, right, just by the power of observing, you have an effect on the interaction. I was thinking so much about Jerilyn and the fact that the way she was perceived, right, in Burbank, if you guys don't know what a SAG card is, which you was talking about, Screen Actors Guild. So in Burbank, California, a SAG card might be enough to get you recognized and seen as someone, oh, this is a person who's safe, and that the person in charge had a lot of power. The observer had so much power over how Jerilyn was seen and how the interaction was going to go. But in Chicago, it was a different observer, it was a different person who was seeing Jerilyn in a different way, or not seeing and not sure if they had the power or how they were going to use their power. And I like that you talked about, you brought up briefly, right? That idea of once you had all your ID taken away from you, saying, I can't prove who I am in this moment. And here you are, a woman who has resources and some level of power and could make a phone call. And how many people are out there in circumstances very different in that case? And the thing that I was thinking of, and some of you may have heard me tell this story, is at the beginning of COVID, you talked about how much COVID changed us. My husband is Jamaican, and so my boys look like some combination of the two of us. And I don't always think about it, but during COVID, when no one was getting a haircut, my older son grew his hair out, and it got really long, and it grew into an afro. And he was driving, and he was going everywhere. And it was right around the time that, if you know the story, Dante Wright was killed. And my son doesn't look that different from Dante Wright. And all I could think of as I sent him out in the world is, please let whoever sees him how he is. See my beautiful child, see my precious son. And I thought about how much power there is in who sees us and how we're seen. So as we send you into the breakout room, we'd like you to, invite you in response to Jerilyn's really very simple but profound story. Is there a case in your life where you were on one side of an interaction, right? Where you either really had the power to see someone and make their way smoother and easier, or you didn't, you really relied on someone really seeing who you were in a way that you hoped they could make your life easier or make the interaction better. So, you know, as we move into the groups, I don't know if that's an exact enough question, but just as we respond to Jerilyn's story about her sitting there saying, please let them see me, please let them, okay, make smooth my path. If you might recall an instance in which you were in that position on one side or the other.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. So as we go into the breakout rooms, our agreements are to speak from your heart, to listen with your heart, to say just enough so that others have an opportunity to share, and to keep confidentiality. When we come back from the breakout rooms, we'll share what's alive, and sharing the themes or sharing your own personal story, should you choose, is fine, but don't share someone else's story unless they want to. And if you're not interested in speaking and sharing, give the gift of listening. And that's a wonderful gift to give. So I'm going to pause the recording, and then we'll be back here in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone. I'm seeing smiling faces. Oh my goodness, what fun. Does anybody want to share anything alive for you from the rooms? You can unmute yourself and share. Don't be shy.
I know, I'm loving, I want to know what all the smiles are. Yeah.
I know. Anna, you're off mute.
Okay, I think I deferred to Andrew, who is new to me. So I hope, Andrew, you just say what you just said and why we have smiles on our faces. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can say it better.
Well, no, well, it was the last statement. We were talking about peace department and the need for it and whatever the political aspect and I just added at the end, we all already have a peace department. It's within.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Anna, for the prompt. Who else would like to share? You can unmute yourself.
Well, Susan, are you there? We had a very interesting discussion on the different situations that we've all identified with Jerilyn. But we got on the topic at the end talking about the Department of Peace and how at this time of all times, because of the anxiety, the stress that everybody's been feeling on top of everything else that's going on with 2.5 years of chronic stress with the pandemic and all of the escalation of violence on so many different levels. Susan was talking about something that would be very interesting to bring to the Peace Alliance. She's talking about civil discourse in classrooms program that she experienced. And I think I know she was, she probably isn't with us right now. She was waiting for some company to come, so she might have left us. But so I'm sort of speaking for her, and maybe the other people in our group could say some more about the idea of listening to both perspectives when you have a particular situation and there's different points of view, doing the pros and cons of both perspectives and then changing sides, and how profound that is. And of course, I was thinking how interesting that would be, doing that with the Democrats and the Republicans right now, or the Oath Keepers and the other side, trying to understand the Trump people and the people that aren't for Trump, all of these crazy things that are really escalating violence right now. So that's all.
Yeah, lovely, Anne. Thank you. These are really challenging times. There's a lot of discord and a lot of stress on the system. And Jerilyn's story showed some of the stress that she felt just trying to travel.
And all the more reason, I think that's I was smiling when we came on because Susan was just finishing when we got cut off, talking about, we really need to ramp up the social media to talk about the Department of Peace, because the solutions are there. They're just not like in our policies yet. So, and it's just, of all the times that it's really needed, it's right now.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Jerilyn, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, it just, in listening to Anne, one of my favorite people. Yeah, with all of the conflicts right now, it's, the Department of Peace is more important than, it's always been important, but it just seems like it just keeps, the importance in terms of the violence that has been really, it's always been there, but since 2016, it was given license to really come out and really show its face, which is, like really important. So at this point, saving democracy in it of itself is a prime issue. If we are going to be able to sit down with other folks and listen and try to understand why they think the way they do, and what causes them to behave in a manner that they are now behaving in, which is not productive really for anyone. Looking at what happened on January 6th, and now people are starting to be prosecuted and to be put in prison and whatever. So this is not good, and for anyone, whatever side you might want to take, politically, but for society in general, it's very unhealthy. Period.
Yeah.
So for our mental health, for our physical health, any way that you want to look at it. So I know the conversations are difficult because it seems like some folks just have a very narrow set of mind where it's believing what they're taught in certain ways, which the country was formed to be able to accommodate anyone's choices in terms of the faith that you wanted to follow, the beliefs that you wanted to follow. It was designed to coexist, not to have one dominate and control and set everything for everyone else. So we're in a position that this is teetering, and to me, can be very, could be, hopefully it won't. And I think that the American public, from the results I'm seeing on certain issues, are saying, no, this is not the country that I want to live in. This is not the America that I, want. And
Yeah.
so, but it seems like the leadership and making the laws and whatever are not quite in step with what majority of our folks in America want to see. So
And
that's
yet this
encouraging to me. So,
Yeah, and yet this week provided a lot of hope in that regard. There were a lot of policies that came
Right.
together and coalesced. But thank you, Jerilyn, for joining us today, and thank you everyone for participating. I'm going to put a few links in the chat. The Peace On podcast and the Hope Story Circle is brought to you by the Peace Alliance, and our website is peacealliance.org. Our podcasts are on the website. Also a page about our Hope Story Circles. There's also a link to our Blueprint for Peace, which is a major initiative. You can click on the link and let all of your elected officials know locally and on a federal level and everything in between that you support policies related to violence reduction and peace building. Also a link to the page about the Department of Peace Building legislation, HR 1111, which we were talking about earlier. We are a small nonprofit. We appreciate donations of any size. Our donate link is on the webpage. And their calendar of events. So you can find our next Hope Stories Circle and other things that we might be doing along the way. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Liz, to bring us to a close.
Can I just say one thing just before we do that, if it's
Sure.
not too much? I'm from Montreal, Canada, but I'm a snowbird and I spend 6 months a year in Florida. And over the last 4 years, I have seen major changes in just the way that people respond to each other. So I was not surprised that, you know, we didn't volunteer easily to talk or whatever. I've seen that with my neighbors in the States. The pandemic also has a role to play with that, with people keeping social distancing and everything. But we need to find ways in which we can reach out and to bring empathy around us. And the only way that we can do that now really is through inner focusing and building our energetic levels, raising our, to use a phrase, our vibrations in a way that would bring people into our circles.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that.
Andrew, I so appreciate what you're going to say because it's a perfect lead into what I was going to say. I want to weave just a closing from what Andrew said before and now, and what Anne said and what Jerilyn said. And many of you know that I regularly have this thing that I do in Bryant Park in New York, which is near Times Square, this Crossroads of Humanity. I throw this, it used to be weekly, it will be again, tea party for strangers and friends alike. And when I was figuring out how to connect with people, there was a question I decided I was going to ask when I meet people, because it may be the only time I meet them. So the question I have learned to ask is, what's the best thing about yourself that you would like to share with a stranger? Right? And it's an answer that people don't have a ready answer for. And I've gotten beautiful conversations. And last week I was at a party and I found myself seated next to a person who I thought, or I got the impression might think politically differently than I did. And so I started with that question. And the person said to me, wow, you know what? I really love the Grateful Dead. That's what they shared, right? I love the Grateful Dead. And I said, I have to tell you something. When I gave birth, I was not a big fan. I didn't know the Grateful Dead well, but when I was pregnant with my first child, I found the music of a drummer, Mickey Hart, and he recorded in utero. When his wife was pregnant, he recorded his child's heartbeat in utero and built a drum concert around it. And that's what I was playing when I was in labor with my son. And I shared that story. And we never got to a conversation that might have gone to a place of politics or anything else, right? We went to this place of how do we connect at that human level, right? And it goes to those, how do we get to the human stories? How do we get there? So what I invite you to do, right, as we move into our next kind of 2 weeks before our next story, is to what Jerilyn shows, right? Every day we have way more personal encounters than huge political encounters. So as we go through our very personal lives, to kind of think about that, right? And look for ways to connect at the human level and negotiate those ways from our heart. So I thank you, Jerilyn, for your story. I thank you, Andrew, for your beautiful observation, and Anne for your invitation, right, to those conversations that could look different. And I wish you all a beautiful, beautiful kind of 2 weeks before our next connection.
Thank you so much. Everyone, please feel free to come off mute and say goodbye.
Bye. Thank
you.
you.
And now
Thank
we're all
you.
smiling, right?
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Jerilyn.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today at Peace On. We hope that it inspires you to engage in dialogue in your larger community. Peace On is brought to you by the Peace Alliance, found peacealliance.org.